This is our project on human genetic diversity. Phylogenetic trees are a way of organizing data that show evolutionary patterns and relationships. This is an example of phylogenetic trees of lizard. Here is how scientists study human genetics and make phylogenetic trees. Scientists use machines called sequencers to sequence entire genomes from collected tissue samples. And project called 1000 Genomes was started by researchers to establish a phylogenetic tree of the entire human race. African American populations were not studied enough, so researchers decided to look into their genome.
Okay, so to resolve the problem of the lack of data with the African American populations, the scientists in our study basically selected three populations in Africa, or three different tribes in Africa, hunter-gatherer tribes in Africa, called the Pygmy, the Sandawe, and the Hadza. And they basically they sequenced the genomes of individuals in these populations, and they wanted to determine which ones were similar and which ones fit into the bigger picture of human evolution, or how Africa in general would fit into the bigger picture of the bigger phylogenetic tree of humans. So this is an example of the type of data that they took, and it shows the allele frequencies of several known alleles on chromosome 3. And basically by determining the frequency of alleles, scientists are able to determine the physical characteristics of a person. And they repeated this type of analysis for all 46 chromosomes of the people in the study. And they were able to determine which individuals were most closely related and which individuals were more distantly related.
These are the results that the researchers got after analyzing the sequenced genome of the different tribes. This is a chart that shows the different variants for the three different tribes, the Sandawe in red, the Hadza in blue, and the Pygmy in green. As you can see, the Pygmy have a lot of variants that are not similar to any of these other ones. They're only for the Pygmies. So that makes them different from the Sandawe and the Hadza. Whereas the Hadza and the Sandawe do not have as many variants that are specifically for their tribe. But even though they're all a little bit differently, there's still a very big overlap of variants because they're still pretty closely related, even though the Pygmy are not as closely related to the Sandawe and the Hadza. This is a very simple phylogenetic tree that the researchers made after finding out how different and similar and the different tribes are and the different sequences and genomes. So as you can see, the Hadza and the Sandawe are pretty closely related on this phylogenetic tree, whereas the Pygmy branches off earlier and is not as closely related to the other two tribes, even though they all have a common ancestor up here, so they're all still related. One hypothesis for this could be that the Sandawe and the Hadza lived very close together, as you can see with the red and the blue dot, whereas the Pygmy was way over here on the other side of Africa. So there was a big physical barrier, so there couldn't be any gene flow between these two different areas very easily. So that's maybe why the Sandawe and the Hadza are more closely related than the Pygmy.
Because scientists were able to sequence the African hunter-gatherers' genomes, they were able to make a phylogenetic tree and fit them into a much larger phylogenetic tree, which you can see here behind me. If you were to take the simple phylogenetic tree that you saw on the last slide and put it right here, then try to compare it with the rest of the human population. As you can see, the pygmy in green, which branches off here, is the only spot where they fit in with the rest of the human population. The Hadza in blue and the Sadawe in red, which are closely related, are branched here, and their common ancestor also shares mostly with the human population here. In conclusion, the phylogenetic tree used genetics in order to map out how populations change over time and how they are related to each other. These are our sources, and thank you for listening to our presentation.